For the Hansard record, will you each please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today?
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Paterson, Chief Executive Officer of Family Daycare Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Michael Farrell, General Manager, Advocacy and Engagement, Family Daycare Australia.
Thank you. I invite you to make a short opening statement. If your statement is longer, I'm happy for you to table that statement. And at the conclusion of any remarks, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners of lands on which we're meeting today and to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you for the opportunity to appear. My name is Andrew Paterson. I'm the CEO of Family Daycare Australia, or FDCA. FDCA is the national peak body for family daycare in Australia. Our membership represents upwards of 90% of the family daycare sector, that being approximately 9,000 educators and 350 approved services nationally. Family daycare is an approved early childhood education and care type. Like centre-based care, it operates under the same regulatory and quality framework and attracts Commonwealth Government subsidies. But FDCA Family Daycare is not a scaled-down version of centre-based care. It is a structurally distinct model. Qualified educators operate as small business contractors from their own homes under the oversight and support of an approved service. This dual-laid governance structure creates a different risk and quality profile, a differentiated cost structure and regulatory interface. Policy and regulation must recognise this distinction. Family daycare inherently benefits from small group settings and strong educator-child-parent relationships. With a maximum of 4 children under school age and a consistent educator, relational safety and quality are structural strengths of the model. FDCA supports the paramountcy of child safety, the regulatory framework and the majority of recent strengthened reforms. However, regulation must be proportionate, evidence-based and calibrated to risk. Applying a centre-based compliance logic to a home-based model risks creating regulatory burden without corresponding safety benefit. Policymakers must pursue a regulatory system that is streamlined, integrated and efficient, not a patchwork of duplicative tasks that redirect time, energy and resources away from educating and caring for children. We're deeply concerned about the cumulative administrative load, which is becoming unsustainable. Since the introduction of the childcare package, approved family daycare services have declined by about 27% and educator numbers by around 40%. Demand has not fallen, viability has. We're losing some of our oldest and most established services. Our membership data shows that administrative burden as a result of significant regulatory creep is the core reason for the vast majority of educators exiting the sector over recent years. Compliance must remain strong, but when regulatory load outpaces capacity, the result is attrition. Attrition reduces safe, regulated care choices for families. Turning quickly to funding and remuneration. Apart from service staff, family daycare is not an employee model, it is an independent contractor model. The hub and spoke structure has not been adequately reflected in funding, remuneration and workforce support systems. These gaps sit at the core of increasing viability strain and diminishing capacity to support children and families. The lower childcare subsidy hourly rate cap for family daycare is inequitable, a position we've held since its inception in 2018 and recognised by the ACCC and Productivity Commission. And while this matter is in scope of the Service Delivery Price Project, an interim adjustment is urgently required. In short, this discrepancy either significantly hamstrings an educator's earning capacity or inequitably leads to a greater out-of-pocket expense for families. The combination of rising administrative burden and inadequate funding has triggered a diminishing viability cycle. This places significant strain on the capacity of the approved service to fulfil their important co-regulatory function, including induction, training, support, monitoring and oversight of educators. That function underpins safety and quality and it must be properly supported. Finally, on access, equity and choice. For many families, family daycare is their option of choice. For many others, it is their only choice. Family daycare disproportionately serves regional and remote communities, areas of socio-economic disadvantage, families requiring non-standard hours, and culturally and linguistically diverse households and children from refugee backgrounds. It provides the vast majority of regulated overnight and weekend care in Australia Outside of long daycare, family daycare is the only other mainstream approved early childhood education care type in this country. Without family daycare, there is no meaningful choice, and without choice, universal access does not exist. I reiterate our endorsement of the paramountcy of child safety and as a foundational principle of Australia's ECEC system. However, safety, quality, viability and access are interdependent, and weakening one ultimately weakens them all. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today, and we look forward to assisting the committee further.
Thank you. You cite and have just noted family daycare's provision of non-standard hours and regional remote coverage.
Yep.
From a family perspective, what is lost when family daycare supply contracts? What are you seeing, and what funding levers do you believe would most directly stabilise that supply, with a particular lens on the remote and regional communities?
Yeah, sure. We know that when family daycare disappears from remote and regional communities, families are more often than not left without any formal care arrangements at all, and are often forced to turn to informal care arrangements. If we go to the extreme of rural environments, children being looked after by family members who are working on a farm, for example. In terms of funding levers, I would start by saying that a broad sweeping adjustment to the childcare subsidy rate for family daycare is critical. It supports the family daycare system on the whole, and we've also advocated for a very long time that there should be particular loadings applied to regional, rural and remote areas, and to non-standard hours provision.
Thank you. You call for compliance mechanisms that don't unintentionally undermine family daycare viability. What are the key or top compliance settings that currently create the most burden for family daycare, and what would you believe needs to be changed first to ensure the viability of family daycare?
Sure. I think we have seen the accumulation of regulatory burden over probably a decade, probably more specifically over the last 12 months. We've seen a period of where the volume and the pace of regulatory reform has been unprecedented. So I would say perhaps more than a particular element of regulation or compliance, that it is a compounding.
It's like an increased ongoing burden.
Increased ongoing burden. And I think also it's probably important to say that the efficiencies of the systems, the integration and interactions between the various systems by which a service remains compliant is not nearly as efficient as it could be. And I think, as we look to upcoming and current reforms like the Educator Register, mandatory child safety training, what we need to focus on is the removal of duplication, of data entry, of the various points at which information needs to be stored, captured, reported. I think they're the types of things where we can see some good gains around administrative burden.
Okay, and just noting that you're seeing that there is duplication or repetition of compliance work that is probably unnecessary. Yeah,
look, I think the inherent nature of the Commonwealth and state and territory obligations under family assistance law and national law and the National Quality Framework and Standards, there is an inherent element of duplication, I suppose. You need a working with children check for your family assistance law. You need it for the national law. So and where they're stored and how they're monitored and reported. I think that we should be taking an aspirational view around the way that these systems, laws and regulatory frameworks intersect, because if we just keep piling on to the service, it distracts from the service's roles and functions around core functions, core business around early education and care for children.
Sure, thank you. You recommend strengthening CCS payment integrity and compliance, including exploring digital solutions to close loopholes. What integrity gaps are you most concerned about? And what solutions would protect children without overburdening legitimate educators?
Sure. Yeah, look, we have, our sector was unfortunately exposed to a period of childcare subsidy non-compliance. There's been an enormous amount of work with the Commonwealth Government over half a decade to address the key loopholes. We are currently doing a project called the Capability Trial with the Commonwealth Government, which among a number of key streams includes what's called a digital validation of attendance, whereby using a digital interface, we're able to geolocate a child on site to validate attendance, for a legitimate session of care. That trial has been going really well, really good feedback from the sector, but also from parents as well. And if we look to sort of moving forward, I'll come back to this issue of system integration, where those systems work in tandem with third-party childcare CCS administration systems. If we can get a more seamless integration across those systems, we can get better integrity, but we can reduce administrative burden.
Thank you. I'll just rotate the call now. Senator Murray-Smith.
Oh, sorry, Senator, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's been a long time since 2020 and we're still struggling with that mute button. But thank you for joining us today. Look, the Chair covered a number of my questions regarding the well-documented instances of fraud that we saw in the sector over the last decade. I understand you've done a lot of work with the Commonwealth Government on that. But can you tell us how regulation of quality and safety in family daycare works currently, given this is a service that takes place in people's homes?
Yeah, sure. So the regulatory framework, the way in which regulators regulate family daycare, the regulatory framework is exactly the same. The way in which family daycare is regulated is effectively the same, but there is an obligation on the family daycare service. We often state that the family daycare approved service, if you like, the head office or the hub, has a really important co-regulatory function to monitor, support and oversee its educators. So a service may have 20, 30, 50 educators that are registered with that service. Regulators will conduct their assessment and ratings processes through the family daycare service and onto educators. They don't necessarily visit all educators, but there will be a sample. But regulators frequently do unannounced visits to services and educators' homes in the same way that they would to like a long day care centre, for example. Okay,
thank you. There's been a bit of discussion through the hearings of this committee so far and also externally on the validity of government extending the CCS or support subsidies to other models of unregulated care. So, for instance, care by nannies within the home or by grandparents. Just curious, you've got a different model to long day care, but still a highly regulated model. What you might see is the quality and safety issues or risks that might emerge in these unsupervised and unregulated environments.
Yeah, sure. My view is it would be a significant step backwards given the incredible amount of work that's been done to shore up, develop and essentially have what is a world-leading quality and safety early education system that within it has a degree of flexibility and choice for families. My view would be that we should be looking far more closely at what are the capabilities and capacities that exist within the system as it stands now, rather than stepping outside of a system and opening the door to, quality and safety and payment integrity risk when there's been so much work done and there is so much capacity within the existing framework to extend, flexibility and choice for families.
Yeah, I mean, that issue of pay integrity was going to be the next question I asked you. I mean, I don't know if you want to expand on that further, in particular, given your sector's experience of some of the risks that can be involved as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess to reiterate my point, I wouldn't. If we step outside the existing frameworks and the safety, the guardrails that are put in place, you literally open the door to a whole new set of fraudsters who will manipulate the system. We see that people follow government money. They move from one sector to another and manipulate the new loopholes that exist when funding becomes available. And I think that would be a system that doesn't have an established. Family daycare has been around for 40 years. There's a very strong, very established framework. You're stepping outside of a system that has any sort of regulatory framework whatsoever. I think it would be fraught with risk.
Thank you. And just before I hand over the call, just a shout out to your family daycare educators. I know they often get missed in the conversations around the role of early educators in a child's life. They do really important work. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before I pass the call on.
And I thank you very much for that. It's so true, and it is hugely appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you so much, and I will add my thanks and acknowledgement on top of Marielle's for the work that you educators do. You've also referred to something called a centre-based logic in our regulatory processes that undermine safety or viability in family daycare. Can you expand on this, including any specific examples that you'd like to get onto the record?
Sure. I probably should just clarify that I'm not saying that the regulatory and quality assessment frameworks undermine quality and safety in family daycare per se. They may not always necessarily reflect quality and safety in the family daycare context. We support the quality and regulatory frameworks. It's just that when a centre-based lens is applied to a model that is fundamentally different, it is often very difficult for quality to be reflected in the same way that it is in a centre-based service. By way of specific example, when a ratings and assessment visit happens in a centre-based context, it is a single location. The correspondence and engagement is often through management and senior staff. When it happens in a family daycare context, and they're given a notice period. The family daycare service is given a notice period at times, and this varies between ratings assessments and between jurisdictions. The educator is advised on the day. Now, the extent to that educator has their 4 children in care on the day, and the extent to which that individual family daycare educator can articulate their reflective practice, their programming, the overall broader governance of the organisation is vastly different to a senior manager or a coordinator in a long daycare service. So it's really just the way in which the lens is applied. A family daycare home doesn't necessarily look like a centre. If we take the continuum of say your biggest, shiniest, most wonderful looking long daycare service to somebody's home, that they're different. They look different. That doesn't inherently mean that one is better quality than the other. And in some cases, we see the opposite.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose with that in mind, would you support an independent review of the National Quality Framework with a view to better including and considering the family daycare context?
That's a good question. I don't know that we necessarily need an independent review. We contracted we did an independent review piece ourselves because we were concerned about this sort of the discrepancy of the lens. It didn't find that there was an inherent bias, but it certainly highlighted some of what I've shared with you today. I think it is important for us to work through ECEC and with the jurisdictions to ensure and have a vision towards consistency, understanding, training of authorised officers around the family daycare model, and that is work that happens now and continues, I think, into the future.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And you've talked a bit about the regulatory and administrative burden that falls on family daycare. Can you tell us any more about the impact of that and, thinking about you often being smaller, less resource providers than centre-based services? Is there anything...
Yeah, if I could, I'd like to draw an intersection between issues like the childcare subsidy fee cap, and we've banged on about this for 8 years now, so I won't miss the opportunity to do it again. But there is an intersection between viability, compliance burden, quality and safety. Viability at the educator level is around attracting and training the highest quality and calibre of staff. Viability at the service level is around the service has a very important co-regulatory function. They need to be out engaging with their educators, inducting new educators. If they don't have the resources to do it, or if those resources are distracted from those core functions into this cumulative administrative burden, you're shifting from one level of focus to another, and without adequate resources you can't do both. In the educator context, educators are caring and looking after children all day, every day. They'll often spend nights, weekends, fulfilling their compliance and regulatory obligations, documenting learning. Whereas a more adequately funded system on the whole would allow those educators to adjust their working pattern to accommodate some of that compliance and regulatory load, and an overall increase in efficiencies of the administrative burden, I think is, as I mentioned before, I think is critical.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And in relation to the safety reforms that we've seen so far, many of them aren't, I suppose, specifically about lifting quality and improving safety. I'm thinking CCTV bans, mobile phone bans, etc. Has the family daycare sector been consulted on these reforms, and do you have any other strong areas?
Yeah, absolutely. We sit on most of the stakeholder reference groups and committees across state and territory and Commonwealth, so we've certainly been consulted. Our views have been heard on many occasions throughout the process. Mobile phones as an example, a particular adaptation of that regulation to a more practical implementation at in the family daycare context. So, that is an example of good and effective engagement and consultation. And often, it's not so much the regulations themselves, but the interpretation or the implementation. And, we talk about the educator register. We're strong supporters of that. I think gaps in work history we can see across the sector more broadly represent risk. But the way in which that system functions and the administrative load that comes with maintaining the system, that's where I think the rubber sort of really hits the road in terms of are these adequately tailored and adapted across the different care types?
Yeah, okay, great. And just finally, on funding, you provided evidence that the lower CCS rate cap is contributing to educator exits and viability strain. Do you have a figure in mind as to what you think the hourly rate cap needs to be to make these roles more sustainable?
I think that some of that will come through the Service Delivery Price Project, which is happening now. We, I guess, advocated early on that parity with long day care should have been the starting point. And when we don't have parity from the starting point, every percentage indexation takes us further and further away. So our early position was that we felt that parity was important. The landscape's changed. We've now seen the worker retention payment brought in for the long day care sector, which has not been applied in the family daycare context, so we fall behind again. Now, we're in negotiations around that particular issue, but, you know, in the context of the changing environment, I would suggest that we should be somewhere 10 to 15% on top of where we are now.
Terrific. Thank you so much for your time today in presenting to our inquiry.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for your evidence today. If you have taken any questions on notice, if you could please return the answers to the Secretariat by Tuesday, the 11th of March 2026. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.